Commander Veltar looked at the blue planet spinning slowly on his screen. His webbed fingers moved across the controls of his ship as he studied the data. Earth, the humans called it. Such a simple name for such a strange world. Sir, we're getting more signals from the surface, his communications officer said. The young Hydran's gills fluttered with excitement. They're fighting each other down there? Veltar nodded. This was the third day they had watched the humans. The planet was covered with wars. Small ones, big ones, wars that seemed to have no purpose at all. The Alliance had seen this before with other young species. Too much aggression, not enough wisdom. What do you think, Commander? Asked Dr. Zefti, the ship's scientist. Her purple skin changed color as she spoke, showing her curiosity. Should we make contact? Veltar thought about it. The humans had just discovered space travel. They had crude weapons and simple technology. But they seemed to love fighting more than anything else. Maybe the Alliance could help them. Maybe they could teach them about peace. Open a channel to Alliance Command, Veltar ordered. Tell them we found another warrior species. They might be useful. The message took 3 hours to reach Alliance headquarters. The response came back quickly. Grand Admiral Thux himself wanted to speak with them. The hologram appeared in the center of the bridge. Thux was a Krillian, tall and thin like a walking tree. His 4 eyes studied the data about Earth. Humans, he said in his deep voice. Interesting. They fight well for such a young species, but they fight too much. What are your orders, sir? Veltar asked. We need them, Thux said. The Blight is moving toward the outer colonies. We can use every warrior we can find, but these humans, they need to learn discipline first. Veltar understood. The Blight was a nightmare that ate entire worlds. They were like a disease that spread from planet to planet, turning everything into more of themselves. The Alliance had been fighting them for 50 years. Bring them to the Kepler system, Thux continued. Let them help with the cleanup operation there. It will be safe enough, and we can watch how they fight. The next day, Veltar's ship appeared in Earth's sky. Humans all over the planet pointed their telescopes up at them. Some shot missiles, but they bounced off the shields like raindrops. The first human ship to meet them was small and ugly. It looked like it was built from spare parts, but it flew straight toward them without fear. This is Captain Lee Taemin of the Korean Space Defense Force, came the voice over the radio. We see you up there, what do you want? Veltar was surprised. Most species were afraid when they first met aliens. These humans sounded ready to fight. We come in peace, Veltar said. We represent the Galactic Preservation Alliance. We would like to speak with your leaders. There was a long pause. Then Lee Taemin spoke again. Come down to Seoul, but come alone and no weapons. Veltar smiled. Even when they were completely outmatched, these humans still made demands. It was either very brave or very stupid. He took a shuttle down to the human city. Seoul was huge and crowded and loud. Millions of humans rushed around like they were all late for something important. The air smelled of exhaust and food and sweat. Captain Lee Taemin met him at the landing pad. He was shorter than Veltar, with dark hair and serious eyes. Behind him stood a woman in a white coat. I'm Dr. Park So-jin, the woman said. I study alien life. Though I guess that's your job now. Lee Taemin led them to a building full of military officers. They all stared at Veltar with curious eyes. Some looked afraid, but most looked excited. So, Lee Taemin said as they sat down, what's this alliance you mentioned? Veltar explained about the different alien species working together. He told them about the peace they had brought to thousands of worlds. He talked about trade and science and cooperation. The humans listened carefully. They asked good questions, but Veltar noticed they asked a lot about weapons and military tactics. And you want us to join? Dr. Park So-jin asked. Eventually, Veltar said. But first you need to prove yourselves. We have a mission that could use your help. He told them about the Blight, about how it consumed everything it touched, about the fleet heading to stop a small outbreak in the Kepler system. It's mostly cleanup work, Veltar said. The main threat is already contained. but you could help with support duties. Lee Tae-min looked at his officers. They whispered among themselves in Korean. Veltar's translator caught most of it. They were excited but also suspicious. What kind of support duties? Lee Tae-min asked. Supply runs, medical assistance, maybe some patrol work around the outer edge of the system. Dr. Park So-jin leaned forward. And if we do well? Then we'll consider full membership in the Alliance. The humans talked for another hour. They asked about technology sharing and territory rights and military cooperation. Smart questions, Veltar thought. These humans might be aggressive, but they weren't stupid. Finally, Admiral Ko Jin-woo arrived. He was older than the others, with gray hair and tired eyes. But when he spoke, everyone listened. We'll send a fleet, he said. But our people follow our orders, not yours. Veltar started to object, but Ko Jin-woo held up his hand. We'll work with your alliance, the Admiral continued. We'll follow your overall strategy, but when it comes to fighting, humans fight the human way. It wasn't what the Alliance usually demanded. New species were supposed to integrate completely, following Alliance protocols and tactics, but Veltar needed these humans. Agreed, he said. Over the next week, Veltar watched the humans prepare their fleet. They worked fast and efficiently. Their ships were still crude by Alliance standards, but they were solid and well-armed. Dr. Park So-jin spent most of her time studying the data about the Blight. She asked questions that even Alliance scientists hadn't thought of. How fast did it spread? What did it eat first? How did it communicate? You're very thorough, Veltar told her. We've learned that it's better to understand your enemy before you fight them, she replied. Captain Lee Tae-min was busy training his crews. Veltar watched some of their exercises. The humans moved differently than Alliance forces. They were more flexible, more willing to take risks. But they also worked together like they had done this before. How long have you been fighting wars? Veltar asked Lee Tae-min one day. The human captain laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. How long have we existed? We've been fighting each other since we learned to pick up sticks. But you want peace now? Lee Tae-min looked at him seriously. We want to survive, and we've learned that sometimes the only way to get peace is to be very good at war. On the last day before departure, Admiral Ko Jin-woo called all his officers together. Veltar was invited to listen. We're about to fight alongside aliens, the Admiral said. This is new for all of us. But remember, we're not just representing Korea or even Earth. We're representing humanity. Show them what we can do. The officers cheered, but Veltar noticed something in their voices. It wasn't excitement or fear. It was hunger, like they were looking forward to the fight. As the human fleet prepared to leave Earth's orbit, Veltar felt a strange uneasiness. These humans seemed almost too eager for battle. Maybe bringing them to fight the Blight wasn't such a good idea, but it was too late now. The ships were already moving toward the jump point. In 3 days, they would reach Kepler system, and Veltar would find out what humans were really like when they fought. The Kepler system looked dead when they arrived. 3 planets orbited the yellow star, but only one had been alive before the Blight came. Now that world was gray and quiet, covered in the twisted shapes that meant Blight infection. Veltar stood on the bridge of his ship, watching the Alliance fleet take positions. 43 vessels from 7 different species, all following the same plan they had used 100 times before. Form a perimeter, scan for active Blight, destroy anything that moved. The human ships took positions on the outer edge of the formation. 12 vessels that looked rough and scarred compared to the smooth Alliance ships. Admiral Ko Jin-woo's flagship Soul's Pride was the biggest. Captain Lee Tae-min commanded a smaller ship called Mountain Tiger. All ships, this is Fleet Commander Nashito, came the voice over the communication system. Nashito was a Vrex, with a voice like grinding rocks. Begin standard Blight cleanup protocol. Energy weapons only. No projectiles, no boarding actions. Veltar had done this many times. The Blight was dangerous, but once it was cut off from new food sources, it died quickly. A few energy blasts to destroy the infected areas, then move on to the next system. The Alliance ships moved forward in perfect formation, their weapons charged up, ready to sterilize the dead planet below. Clean, efficient, safe. But something felt wrong. "Sir," his sensor operator called out, "I'm reading movement on the surface. The blight signatures are changing." Veltar looked at his screens. The blight patterns were shifting, moving in ways he had never seen before. Usually, blight just sat there and waited to die. This looked like it was preparing for something. "Fleet Commander Nashto," Veltar called. "My sensors show unusual activity." "Noted, Commander. Maintain formation. Begin bombardment in 30 seconds. The first energy beams hit the planet's surface. Bright flashes lit up the gray wasteland as blight structures exploded. For a moment, everything seemed normal. Then the planet fought back. Veltar had never seen blight do anything like it. Thousands of organic projectiles shot up from the surface, moving too fast for the defense systems to track. They weren't random shots, they were aimed. The Alliance ship Thunder of Kess took 3 hits and exploded. Captain Yulth's cruiser lost its engines and started spinning out of control. In 30 seconds, the perfect Alliance formation was chaos. "All ships withdraw to safe distance," Nashito ordered. "Regroup at Rally Point 7. But the blight wasn't finished. The dead planet suddenly sprouted what looked like massive flowers. Each one opened to reveal a new type of blight ship, sleek and fast and obviously designed for space combat. Veltar watched in horror as 12 blight ships launched from the planet. They moved like living creatures, dancing between the Alliance energy beams. 3 more Alliance ships died in the first minute of the attack. "This is impossible." Nashito's voice was full of panic. "Blight doesn't build ships. Blight doesn't coordinate attacks." On his screen, Veltar saw the human ships moving. They weren't retreating like the rest of the Alliance fleet. They were advancing. "Human vessels, maintain formation," Nashito ordered. "Follow retreat protocol." Admiral Ko Jinwoo's voice came over the communications channel, calm and steady. "Negative, Fleet Commander. We're moving to engage." "You don't understand the danger. These are not normal blight organisms." "We can see that," Ko Jinwoo replied. "But running away won't solve the problem." Veltar watched the human ships spread out into a different formation. Instead of the rigid lines the Alliance used, they moved like a pack of hunting animals. Captain Lee Taemin's Mountain Tiger took the lead, with the other ships following in a loose pattern that seemed random, but somehow felt right. Dr. Park So-jin's voice came over the communications channel. She was aboard Soul's Pride watching the battle unfold. "The blight ships are using predictive algorithms," she said. "They're calculating where our ships will be and firing at those locations." "How can you tell?" Veltar asked. "Because that's what I would do," she said. "They've been watching Alliance tactics. They know how you move, how you think, but they haven't seen humans fight yet." The first blight ship to attack the humans learned quickly that human tactics were different. Instead of maintaining formation, Mountain Tiger suddenly spun sideways and dropped, letting the blight weapons fire harmlessly past it. At the same time, 2 other human ships came at the blight vessel from completely different angles. The blight ship tried to adapt, but it was too late. The humans had already changed their plan again. Veltar found himself assigned to observe the human fleet directly. His ship docked with Soul's Pride, and Admiral Ko Jinwoo welcomed him aboard. The human ship was different from Alliance vessels. It smelled of metal and oil, and something else Veltar couldn't identify. The corridors were narrower, and everything seemed built for efficiency rather than comfort. On the bridge, Veltar watched the humans work. They talked constantly, sharing information and ideas. No rigid chain of command, just people working together toward the same goal. Sergeant Nam Do-hyun reports 3 blight ships moving to flank position, called out a young officer. Kim Hye-jin has a shot on the lead ship, reported another. Admiral Ko Jinwoo listened to everything, but he didn't give many orders. Instead, he let his people make decisions on their own. "This is very different from Alliance procedures," Veltar said. Ko Jinwoo nodded. "Alliance procedures work when you're fighting someone who thinks like you do. But the Blight has been studying those procedures for decades. It knows what you're going to do before you do it. On the main screen, Veltar watched Lieutenant Kim Hyojin pilot her fighter ship through a cloud of blight weapons fire. She moved like she could see the future, avoiding shots that seemed impossible to dodge. How does she do that? Veltar asked. Practice, Ko Jin-woo said. Kim Hyojin has been flying since she was 15, not in space but in Earth's atmosphere, dodging missiles, outrunning enemy fighters, staying alive when everything around her was trying to kill her. You've been fighting space battles for 15 years? Ko Jin-woo looked at him strangely. We've been fighting battles for thousands of years, Commander. The location doesn't matter as much as you might think. The tide of the battle was turning. The blight ships had destroyed 6 Alliance vessels, but they were losing to the humans. Not because human weapons were better, but because human tactics were unpredictable. Dr. Park So-jin appeared on the bridge, carrying a tablet full of data. I've been analyzing the blight behavior patterns, she said. This isn't random evolution. Someone taught them how to fight like this. What do you mean? Veltar asked. The blight have been watching Alliance battles for decades. Every time you fight them, they learn something new. By now, they know Alliance tactics better than Alliance commanders do. Admiral Ko Jin-woo studied the data. So they're not just mindless parasites anymore. No, Dr. Park So-jin said. They're weapons. Someone turned them into the perfect anti-Alliance military force. The implications hit Veltar like a physical blow. If the blight could learn and adapt, if they could build ships and coordinate attacks, then every world in Alliance space was in danger. We need to tell Fleet Commander Nashto, Veltar said. Already done, Ko Jin-woo replied. But right now we have a more immediate problem. On the screen, the sensors showed more movement from the planet's surface. Not just a few more blight ships, hundreds of them. The first wave was just a test, Dr. Park So-jin said quietly. They wanted to see how we fight. Now they're sending the real attack force. Veltar felt his gills flutter with fear. The Alliance fleet had already lost 6 ships to 12 blight vessels. How could they survive against hundreds? But when he looked around the human bridge, he didn't see fear. He saw excitement. The humans were looking forward to this fight. All human ships, this is Admiral Ko Jin-woo, came the announcement. Switch to Combat Protocol 7. Full engagement authorized. Veltar had never heard of Combat Protocol 7. But as he watched the human ships move into new positions, he realized he was about to see something the Alliance had never witnessed. Before, these humans weren't just going to fight the blight, they were going to hunt them. The second wave of blight ships rose from the planet like angry insects. Veltar counted over 300 vessels, each one different from the last. Some were huge and covered in weapons. Others were small and fast like the human fighters. A few looked like nothing he had ever seen before. Fleet Commander Nashito's voice crackled over the communications system. All Alliance ships retreat to jump point, prepare for emergency withdrawal. But Admiral Ko Jin-woo had other plans. Human fleet maintain positions, execute Hammer Protocol. Veltar didn't know what Hammer Protocol meant, but he could see the results. The human ships didn't retreat. Instead, they spread out into an even wider formation, with each ship taking a different approach to the incoming blight swarm. Admiral, Veltar said carefully, perhaps we should consider withdrawal. 300 ships against 12 is not good odds. Ko Jin-woo looked at him with those serious dark eyes. Commander, have you ever seen a human hunt? I don't understand. On Earth, humans used to hunt animals much bigger and stronger than themselves. A single human couldn't kill a mammoth, but a group of humans working together could drive an entire herd off a cliff. On the screen, Lieutenant Kim Hyojin's fighter dove straight toward the largest blight ship. At the last second, she fired a spread of missiles and pulled away. The missiles didn't do much damage, but they got the big ship's attention. The blight vessel turned to follow her, bringing it into range of Captain Lee Taemin's Mountain Tiger. Lee Taemin didn't attack right away. He waited until the blight ship was committed to chasing Kim Hyojin, then hit it from the side. But that wasn't the end of the plan. The damaged blight ship tried to escape, only to run straight into Sergeant Nam Do-hyun's patrol boat. Nam Do-hyun had been waiting in exactly the right place, like he knew where the blight ship would go before it did. They're working together, Feltar realized. Every human ship is connected, Dr. Park So-jin explained. She had returned to the bridge with more data tablets. They share information instantly. What one ship sees, they all see. What one ship learns, they all learn. It was completely different from Alliance tactics. Alliance ships worked in formation, following predetermined patterns. If the formation broke down, each ship fought alone. But the humans seemed to be fighting as one organism with 12 bodies. The battle was unlike anything Veltar had ever witnessed. The Blight ships tried to use the same tactics that had worked against Alliance forces. They predicted where human ships would be and fired at those locations. But the humans weren't where the Blight expected them to be. Instead of following predictable patterns, each human ship moved like it was alive. They dodged and weaved and changed direction without warning. Sometimes they worked together, sometimes they split apart. The Blight computers couldn't calculate what they would do next because the humans themselves didn't know until they did. Yet how do they coordinate without predetermined plans, Veltar asked. Admiral Ko Jin-woo smiled, but it wasn't a happy expression. The same way humans have always coordinated. We talk to each other. On the communications channel, Veltar could hear the constant chatter between human ships. Not formal military reports, but quick conversations between people who trusted each other completely. Kim Hye-jin, big one coming up on your 6. I see it. Nam Do-hyun, can you take the shot? Negative, I'm engaged. Lee Tae-min, on my way. Give me 10 seconds. It was chaos, but it was organized chaos. Like a dance that everyone knew the steps to, even though no one had written them down. The Blight adapted quickly, but not quickly enough. For every new tactic they tried, the humans had already moved on to something else. What had started as a battle was becoming a massacre. But Veltar noticed something that made his gills flutter with unease. The humans weren't just destroying Blight ships, they were studying them. Every attack was also a learning experience. Dr. Park So-jin confirmed his suspicions. We're gathering data on Blight ship construction, weapons systems, and tactical responses, she said. This battle is giving us more information about Blight capabilities than the Alliance has collected in 50 years. Why? Veltar asked. Because we're fighting them up close instead of running away. As the battle continued, more Alliance ships began to return. They had seen the humans winning against impossible odds and wanted to help. But when they tried to join the fight using standard Alliance tactics, they just got in the way. Alliance. Vessel Thunder's Edge, you're disrupting our pattern, came Captain Lee Taemin's voice over the communication system. Either follow our lead or stay back. Captain Hiltos of the Thunder's Edge sounded insulted. I don't take orders from primitives. Then stay out of our way, Lee Taemin replied calmly. Veltar watched Thunder's Edge attempt a standard Alliance attack run. The ship moved in a straight line toward a group of Blight vessels, weapons charging. It was exactly what Alliance tactical manuals recommended. It was also exactly what the Blight expected. 3 Blight ships surrounded Thunder's Edge and tore it apart in seconds. The Blight have been studying Alliance tactics for decades, Dr. Park So-jin said quietly. They know every standard maneuver, every common formation, every predictable response. Fighting them the Alliance way is suicide. More Alliance ships died trying to use their standard tactics. Fleet Commander Nashito finally ordered all remaining Alliance vessels to maintain safe distance and observe. That left the humans alone against over 200 Blight ships. Veltar expected the humans to be overwhelmed, but something strange was happening. The more Blight ships there were, the better the humans seemed to fight, like they were more comfortable when the odds were against them. On Earth, humans were never the biggest or strongest predators, Admiral Ko Jin-woo explained. But we were the smartest, and we learned that being outnumbered wasn't always a disadvantage. How can being outnumbered be good? Because when there are many enemies, they get in each other's way. Watch. On the screen, Kim Hee-jin led a group of Blight ships through a narrow space between 2 asteroids. The Blight ships tried to follow her in formation, but the space was too tight. They had to line up single file. That's when the other human ships attacked. Instead of facing dozens of enemies at once, they could pick off the Blight ships one at a time as they came through the narrow passage. It was brilliant and ruthless, and completely unlike anything in Alliance tactical manuals. As the hours passed, Veltar began to understand what he was witnessing. The humans weren't just better at fighting the Blight, they were better at fighting, period. This was what they had been doing to each other for thousands of years. Your species has been at war for your entire history, Veltar said to Dr. Park Sojin. Yes, she replied. We've tried peace many times. Sometimes it even works for a while. But sooner or later, we always end up fighting again. That's terrible. Doctor. Park Sojin looked at him with sad eyes. Yes, it is. But it's also made us very good at staying alive when everything else wants to kill us. By the end of the battle, less than 50 Blight ships remained. They tried to retreat back to the planet's surface, but the humans didn't let them go. Human ships chased them down one by one, like predators hunting fleeing prey. Veltar realized he was seeing something that would change everything. The Alliance had always assumed that their advanced technology and civilized tactics made them superior fighters. But these humans, with their crude ships and chaotic methods, had just destroyed a Blight force that should have been impossible to defeat. What happens now? Veltar asked Admiral Ko Jinwoo. The human admiral looked at the dead planet on the screen. Now we go down there and finish the job. The Blight on the surface has been cut off from reinforcement. It should be easy to clean up. But Veltar was beginning to learn that nothing involving humans was ever easy, and he had a feeling that the real battle was just beginning. 3 days after the surface battle, Dr. Park Sojin made a discovery that changed everything. She found Veltar in the observation deck of Soul's Pride, staring out at the infected planet below. It's not just one planet, she said without introduction. The whole system is connected. Veltar turned to look at her. The human scientist looked exhausted, like she hadn't slept since they had returned from the surface. Her eyes were red from staring at data screens. What do you mean? He asked. Dr. Park Sojin activated a holographic display that showed the entire Kepler system. The Blight infection isn't limited to the third planet. There are organic structures on the asteroids, the moons, even floating in space between the planets. They're all part of one massive organism. Veltar studied the display with growing horror. If Dr. Park Sojin was right, then they weren't fighting a simple infection. They were fighting a creature the size of an entire solar system. How is that possible? He asked. The same way a human brain works, she replied. Billions of individual cells, all connected, all working together. The planet we landed on isn't just infected with Blight. It's become the central nervous system of something huge. Admiral Ko Jinwoo arrived on the observation deck, followed by Captain Lee Tae-min and Lieutenant Kim Hee-jin. They all looked grim. Show him, the Admiral said. Dr. Park Sojin changed the holographic display to show long-range sensor readings. We've been monitoring communications between the Blight structures. They're not using radio or any technology we recognize. They're using quantum entanglement. Impossible, Veltar said. Quantum entanglement communication requires massive computing power and precision engineering. The Blight is just a biological parasite. Not anymore, Captain Lee Tae-min said. It's been eating Alliance technology for decades. All those ships, all those colonies, all that advanced equipment. The Blight didn't just consume them, it learned from them. The implications were staggering. The Alliance had been fighting the Blight for 50 years, thinking they were dealing with a simple biological threat. But they had actually been feeding it, teaching it, making it stronger with every battle. There's more, Dr. Park Sojin continued. The quantum communication network extends beyond this system. We're detecting similar signals from other Blight-infected areas throughout Alliance. Space. You're saying all the Blight infections are connected? Veltar asked. I'm saying there's only one Blight. It's not a species or a disease. It's a single organism that spans dozens of star systems. And we just taught it how humans fight. The observation deck fell silent as everyone absorbed this information. They had won the battle, but they had also given the enemy valuable intelligence about human tactics and weapons. So what do we do? Lieutenant Kim Hye-jin asked. Admiral Ko Jinwoo looked at the holographic display showing the massive Blight network. We kill it, all of it, before it can use what it learned against other human colonies. How? Veltar asked. You can't destroy something that spans multiple star systems. Actually, we can, Dr. Park Sojin said. The quantum entanglement network that connects all the blight nodes is also its weakness. If we can overload the central node, the brain of the system, the feedback will destroy all connected nodes simultaneously. She highlighted the third planet on the display. This world is the main processing center, the blight mind that's been learning and adapting for decades. If we can destroy it completely, the entire network will collapse. Captain Lee Taemin studied the data. What would it take? Total destruction of the planet's core, Dr. Park Sojin replied. We'd need to penetrate to the center of the world and detonate something powerful enough to shatter the entire planet. The Alliance has planet-killer weapons, Veltar said. We could request— No, Admiral Ko Jin-woo interrupted. By the time Alliance Command understands the threat and authorizes the use of planet killers, the Blight will have adapted. It knows we discovered the network. It's probably already moving to protect itself. Lieutenant Kim Hyejin looked at the others. So we do it ourselves. Right now. With what? Veltar asked. Human ships don't carry planet-killer weapons. Admiral Ko Jin-woo smiled, but it wasn't a pleasant expression. We don't need planet-killer weapons. We just need to be creative. Over the next 6 hours, Veltar watched the humans plan the most insane military operation he had ever witnessed. They were going to fly their ships directly into the heart of a blight-infected world, fight their way to the planet's core, and detonate their own fusion reactors to destroy everything. It was suicide. It was also the only plan that might work. The Blight will throw everything it has at us, Sergeant Nam Do-hyun warned during the briefing. Once we're inside the planet, there's no retreat, no rescue, no second chances. Understood, Admiral, Ko Jin-woo replied. All human personnel are volunteers only. Anyone who wants to transfer to an Alliance ship can do so with no questions asked. Not a single human requested transfer. Veltar found himself assigned to the mission as an Alliance observer. He tried to refuse, but Admiral Ko Jin-woo insisted. If we succeed, someone needs to tell Alliance Command what really happened here, the Admiral said. And if we fail, someone needs to warn them about what's coming. The assault began at dawn. On the 4th day, 12 human ships dove toward the infected planet like arrows shot from a bow. The Blight was ready for them. The planet's surface erupted with defensive weapons unlike anything they had faced before. Energy beams that could track moving targets across thousands of kilometers. Projectiles that seemed to bend space around themselves. Defensive fields that could stop any known weapon. But the humans had studied the Blight defenses during their surface mission. They knew where the weapons were and how they worked. More importantly, they knew the Blight's weakness. The Blight thinks like a computer, Dr. Park Sojin explained as their ship dove through a storm of defensive fire. It calculates probabilities and makes logical decisions. But humans don't always act logically. To prove her point, Captain Lee Taemin suddenly reversed course and flew directly toward the heaviest concentration of Blight weapons. It was exactly the wrong tactical decision. It was also completely unexpected. The Blight weapons had been aimed at where Lee Taemin's ship should have gone, not where it actually went. By the time they could readjust, Mountain Tiger had already passed through their firing zone. One by one, the human ships used similar tactics to penetrate the planet's defenses. They did things that made no tactical sense, that violated every principle of military strategy. And because they made no sense, the Blight couldn't predict them. The entrance to the planet's core was a massive tunnel that descended through layers of twisted Blight tissue. As they flew deeper, Veltar watched the walls pulse with alien thoughts. The Blight knew they were coming. It was preparing for them. Life signs ahead, Lieutenant Kim Hee-jin reported. Lots of them, big ones. The tunnel opened into a vast cavern at the planet's heart, and waiting for them was the true face of the Blight. It wasn't a creature, it wasn't a machine. It was something between the two, a fusion of biology and technology that hurt to look at directly. Tentacles the size of starships writhed through the air. Eyes like moons tracked their movement, and at the center of it all was a brain the size of a city, pulsing with the stolen knowledge of 1,000 dead civilizations. So that's what we've been fighting, Admiral Ko Jinwoo said quietly. The Blight mind spoke to them not with words but with images and emotions forced directly into their thoughts. It showed them what it had learned, what it had become. It offered to spare humanity if they would serve it, join with it, become part of its ever-growing consciousness. The response from Admiral Ko Jinwoo was a single word: no. The final battle began in the heart of a dying world, with 12 human ships against a creature that had consumed entire civilizations. And for the first time since meeting humans, Veltar truly understood what the word terrifying meant. The planet's surface was worse than Veltar had imagined. From space it had looked dead and gray. Up close it looked like a nightmare. The Blight hadn't just killed everything on this world, it had twisted it. Trees grew in impossible spirals, their bark covered in pulsing veins. The ground itself seemed to breathe, rising and falling like the chest of a sleeping giant. And everywhere, there were structures that hurt to look at, buildings that seemed to exist in too many dimensions at once. Veltar stood in the shuttle bay of Soul's Pride, wearing his environmental suit and trying not to think about what they were about to do. Around him, human Marines checked their weapons and equipment with calm efficiency. Sergeant Nam Do-hyun looked comfortable in his heavy armor, like he had been born wearing it. The weapon he carried was unlike anything Veltar had seen before. Part energy rifle, part projectile launcher, part cutting tool. First time on a Blight world? Nam Do-hyun asked. Yes, Veltar admitted. Alliance protocol is to sterilize from orbit. We don't usually land. Nam Do-hyun nodded. Safer that way, but you can't learn much about your enemy from a distance. Park So-jin approached, carrying what looked like a briefcase full of scientific instruments. The atmospheric readings are strange, she said. The Blight isn't just consuming organic matter, it's converting the entire ecosystem into something else. Something else like what? Veltar asked. That's what we're here to find out, Captain. Lee Taemin's voice came over the communication system. All teams prepare for deployment, remember. This is a reconnaissance mission. We go in, gather data, and get out. No heroics. The shuttle bay doors opened, revealing the twisted landscape. Below, Veltar felt his gills flutter as he got his first taste of Blight-infected air through his suit filters. It tasted like metal and decay, and something else that made his skin crawl. They landed near what had once been a city. The buildings were still there, but they had been changed into something that belonged in a fever dream. Streets curved upward into impossible loops. Windows opened onto spaces that couldn't exist. And through it all, the Blight pulsed and grew like a cancer. Stay close, Sergeant Nam Do-hyun warned as they left the shuttle. Blight worlds are full of surprises. Most of them will try to kill you. They moved through the ruined city in small groups with human Marines leading and Alliance observers following. Veltar was paired with Lieutenant Kim Hye-jin, who moved through the twisted streets like she belonged there. Doesn't this bother you? Veltar asked, as they passed a fountain that flowed upward instead of down. Kim Hye-jin shrugged. I've seen worse. During the Korean Reunification War, I flew bombing runs over cities that had been hit with experimental weapons. Some of those places looked like this. Your own people did this to each other? War makes people do terrible things, she said simply. The important thing is to learn from it and try not to do it again. They reached the center of the city, where the Blight infection was thickest. Here, the buildings had merged into one massive structure that pulsed with its own heartbeat. Organic corridors led deep into the ground, and strange sounds echoed up from the darkness below. Dr. Park So-jin set up her instruments and began taking readings. The Blight isn't just alive, she said. It's thinking. This whole planet has become one giant brain. That's impossible, Veltar protested. Blight is a simple parasite. It doesn't have intelligence. This Blight does. Dr. Park Seo-jin replied, and I think I know why. She showed them her readings on a portable screen. The blight on this world has been exposed to Alliance technology for over 30 years. It's been studying every piece of equipment, every computer system, every tactical database that Alliance forces brought here. You're saying it learned from us? I'm saying it ate your people and absorbed their knowledge. Every Alliance soldier who died here made the blight smarter. The implications were terrifying. If the blight could absorb knowledge and intelligence, then every battle against it was making it stronger. Every Alliance victory was teaching it how to win the next time. We need to get this information back to the fleet, Veltar said. But before they could move, the ground beneath their feet began to shake. The pulsing heartbeat of the blight structure grew faster and louder, and from the organic corridors came sounds that Veltar had never heard before, like screaming mixed with static. Contact! Sergeant Nam Do-hyun's voice crackled over the radio. Blight organisms emerging from underground. Multiple contacts. All sizes. Veltar saw them coming up out of the twisted streets. They looked like the blight creatures he had read about in Alliance reports, but wrong somehow. These moved with purpose and intelligence. They worked together, coordinating their attacks like a military unit. The first wave hit the human perimeter like a living tsunami. Veltar expected the humans to retreat, to call for extraction and bombardment from orbit. That's what Alliance forces would have done. Instead, the humans stood their ground and fought. Sergeant Nam Do-hyun's weapon made sounds Veltar had never heard before. Not just energy discharge or projectile fire, but something that seemed to tear the air itself. The blight creatures that got hit didn't just die. They came apart at the molecular level. What kind of weapon is that? Veltar shouted over the noise of battle. Plasma shredder with molecular disruptor, Nam Do-hyun replied while firing. We built it specifically for fighting blight. Tears apart their cellular structure so they can't regenerate. Lieutenant Kim Hae-jin moved through the battle like she was dancing. Her weapon was smaller but just as effective. She didn't waste shots or ammunition. Every pull of the trigger killed a blight creature. But what impressed Veltar most was how the humans worked together. They didn't have predetermined formations or rigid tactics. They flowed around each other like water, always in exactly the right place at exactly the right time. How do they do that? Veltar asked Dr. Park Seo-jin, who was still taking readings even while the battle raged around them. Thousands of years of practice, she replied. Humans have been fighting in small groups for their entire evolutionary history. We know how to work together even when everything is chaos. The battle lasted for hours. Wave after wave of blight creatures emerged from the underground tunnels and the humans destroyed them all. But Veltar noticed that the creatures were getting smarter with each attack. They were learning from their failures and adapting their tactics. The blight is studying us, he warned Captain Lee Taemin over the radio. I know, Lee Taemin replied. That's why we're not using our best weapons yet. What do you mean? We're letting them see our standard equipment and basic tactics. When they adapt to counter those, we'll switch to the real weapons. It was a strategy that would never have occurred to Alliance commanders. Instead of showing the enemy their full capabilities, the humans were deliberately holding back their best weapons. They were teaching the blight to counter the wrong things. As the day wore on, the blight attacks became more sophisticated. The creatures began using formations and coordinated strikes. They even started using the twisted cityscape to their advantage, attacking from unexpected angles and using cover effectively. That's when Sergeant Nam Do-hyun gave the order Veltar had been waiting for. All units, switch to Protocol Omega weapons. Full authorization granted. Veltar had never heard of Protocol Omega, but he saw the results immediately. The human weapons changed, becoming more powerful and more terrifying. Energy beams that could cut through solid rock. Projectiles that exploded into clouds of molecular acid. Devices that seemed to bend space itself around their targets. But the most frightening thing wasn't the weapons themselves. It was how casually the humans used them, like they had been saving the good stuff for when it was really needed. The blight creatures that had been adapting to human tactics suddenly found themselves facing weapons they had never seen before. The tide of battle turned in minutes. Where did you get these weapons? Veltar asked Dr. Park Seo-jin. She looked at him with those sad human eyes. We made them, for fighting other humans. The truth hit Veltar like a physical blow. These weren't anti-blight weapons. They were anti-human weapons. The humans had developed technology specifically designed to kill their own species, and now they were using it against an alien enemy. Protocol Omega, he said quietly. That's your plan for fighting other humans. Was, Dr. Park Seo-jin corrected. We hoped we'd never need it again, but the principles work just as well against the blight. By sunset, the battle was over. The blight creatures were dead or driven back into their tunnels. The human teams had collected enough data to fill a dozen research databases, and Veltar had seen something that would haunt him for the rest of his life. These humans weren't just good at fighting aliens. They were experts at fighting themselves, and that made them the most dangerous species he had ever encountered. The battle in the planet's core lasted forever and was over in minutes. Time seemed to bend around them as the massive blight consciousness lashed out with weapons that existed in dimensions Veltar couldn't comprehend. Lieutenant Kim Hye-jin's fighter was the first to die, crushed by a tendril that moved faster than light. She had time for one final message. For Earth. Then her ship's fusion reactor overloaded, taking a chunk of the blight brain with it. Sergeant Nam Do-hyun lasted 3 minutes longer, his ship dancing between attacks that could have destroyed moons. He kept firing until his weapons ran out of power, then rammed his ship directly into one of the creature's eyes. The explosion lit up the cavern like a new sun. One by one, the human ships fell. But each death weakened the blight consciousness, a little more. Each sacrifice bought precious seconds for the others to get closer to their target. Captain Lee Tae-min's Mountain Tiger made it within 100 meters of the central brain, before a blast of pure thought tore his ship apart. But he had done his job. His final torpedo created the opening that Admiral Ko Jin-woo needed. Seoul's Pride dove through the gap, its hull glowing red from the heat of the blight's attacks. On the bridge, Admiral Ko Jin-woo stood calmly at his command post while the ship shook apart around him. Dr. Park Seo-jin, are you ready? He asked. The scientist nodded, her hands flying over her control console. The quantum resonance bomb is armed. When our reactor overloads, it will create a cascade failure throughout the entire network. Veltar looked around the bridge. Half. The human crew was already dead, killed by the blight's psychic attacks. The survivors looked calm, like they were doing exactly what they had been born to do. Any last words? Admiral Ko Jin-woo asked. Dr. Park Seo-jin smiled sadly. Tell our people back home that we tried to be better than what we are. Admiral Ko Jin-woo nodded. Reactor overload in 10 seconds. All hands, brace for... The explosion tore reality apart. Veltar's last memory was of the blight consciousness screaming as the quantum cascade ripped through its network, destroying decades of stolen knowledge in a single instant. When he woke up, he was floating in space inside an emergency pod. Around him, the system was quiet. The infected planet was gone, replaced by a field of glowing debris. The blight structures on the other worlds were dark and lifeless. An Alliance rescue ship found him 3 hours later. As they pulled him aboard, Veltar looked back at what remained of the Kepler system. 12 human ships had died here. 12 ships and their entire crews sacrificed to stop a threat that the Alliance hadn't even understood. The rescue ship's captain was a Vrex named Kilhar. What happened here? He asked. Veltar told him everything. About the blight network that had spanned dozens of systems. About the consciousness that had been learning from every Alliance battle for 50 years. About the humans who had given their lives to destroy it. Kilhar listened in silence. When Veltar finished, the Vrex captain looked out at the debris field. They destroyed an entire planet to stop the blight? They destroyed themselves to stop the blight, Veltar corrected. The planet was just collateral damage. The trip back to Alliance Command took 2 weeks. During that time, Veltar wrote his report. He tried to explain what he had witnessed, but words seemed inadequate. How do you describe watching a species sacrifice itself to save people they had just met? When he reached Alliance headquarters, Grand Admiral Thux was waiting for him. The tall Krillian read Veltar's report with all four of his eyes, occasionally making sounds of disbelief. "This is impossible," Thux finally said. "Humans don't have the technology for planet-killing operations." "They didn't use technology," Veltar replied. "They used themselves. And you're certain the Blight network is destroyed?" "All the infected systems have gone dark. Whatever the humans did, it worked." Thux was quiet for a long time. Then he asked the question Veltar had been dreading. "What do you recommend we do about the humans?" Veltar thought about Admiral Ko Jinwoo, standing calmly on his bridge while his ship died around him. About Dr. Park So-jin, smiling sadly as she armed a weapon that would kill her. About Lieutenant Kim Hye-jin, diving into certain death with a joke on her lips. "I recommend we treat them as equals," he said finally. "Full membership in the Alliance with complete military autonomy. They're a young species, primitive, aggressive. They're the most dangerous predators in the galaxy," Veltar corrected. "And the only reason we're still alive is because they chose to be our allies instead of our enemies." Thux studied the report again. "You really believe humans are a threat to Alliance security?" "I believe humans are a threat to anyone who threatens Alliance security. The question is whether we want them working with us or against us." 3 months later, the Alliance Council voted to grant humanity full membership status. The official reason was their contribution to the war against the Blight. The unofficial reason was fear of what might happen if they said no. Veltar returned to Earth to deliver the news personally. He found the planet in mourning for its lost heroes, but also preparing for the future. New ships were being built, incorporating lessons learned from the Blight War. He met with the new Korean Space Defense Force commander, Admiral Park Min-ho, Dr. Park So-jin's younger brother. "Your sister died saving the galaxy," Veltar told him. Park Min-ho nodded. "She died doing her duty. That's what she would have wanted." "Are you angry about the losses?" Park Min-ho thought about it. "Sad, yes. Angry? No. We knew the risks when we volunteered, and we accomplished our mission." Veltar left Earth with a new understanding of humanity. They weren't just warriors or predators or any of the simple labels he had tried to use. They were something more complex and dangerous and beautiful. They were a species that had spent thousands of years learning to kill each other, and had somehow managed to turn that knowledge into a force for protecting others. They were capable of unimaginable violence and incredible sacrifice, often at the same time. Years later, when other species asked Veltar about humans, he always gave the same answer: "Be grateful they're on our side." But privately, he remembered standing on the Bridge of Soul's Pride, watching humans prepare to die for people they had just met. He remembered the calm acceptance in their voices, the determination in their eyes, the willingness to sacrifice everything for a cause they believed in. That was when he learned the true meaning of terror. Not the fear of an enemy, but the awe-inspiring, spine-tingling recognition that you are standing beside the most dangerous creatures in the universe, and they have chosen to call you friend. The humans had saved the Alliance, but they had also changed it forever. Other species began adopting human tactics, human weapons, human ways of thinking about warfare. The rigid, predictable Alliance military doctrine gave way to something more flexible and deadly. Some called it evolution. Others called it corruption. Veltar called it survival. Because now, when the Alliance faced its next great threat, it would have something it had never possessed before: the knowledge of how to win wars not through superior technology or overwhelming numbers, but through the simple, terrible willingness to pay any price for victory. The humans had taught them that sometimes the only way to preserve civilization is to embrace the monster that lives in every intelligent species' heart. The difference was that humans had learned to aim that monster at their enemies instead of each other, most of the time. And that, Veltar realized, was what made them truly terrifying.